gotta move on. Stop living in the past and look at what you got right in front of you.
What are you saying?
Me, Joe.
The movie Twister starts off with a scene where young Joe, a little blonde girl, and her family run and hide in a storm shelter while a tornado terrorizes their town. And in that scene, you see the whole family and their dog go into the storm cellar. The mom and the daughter go to the back of the storm cellar, and the father holds the storm cellar door down. And, you don't see the tornado, but you hear it. You see the door of the shelter rattling hard and ripping apart. And then Joe, who's just curious, walks up away from her mother and toward the steps and looks up and wants to see the tornado. And just as she does that, the tornado yanks the door open and yanks her father and the door away into itself. And he just disappears. And then the daughter freaks out and screams and tries to run after her dad, but her mom catches her and holds her and fights her own daughter to keep her from running into the tornado. And that's how the movie starts. The story really kicks off when adult Joe, played by Helen Hunt, her nearly ex-husband, has come to visit her with her team. She's grown up to become a storm chaser. She chases tornadoes and tries to build devices that can better study tornadoes and how they behave, so that prediction systems for tornado warnings can be much further in advance. And so what you have right there in the setup is the sort of motivation of the character for the job they're doing. And you see she strings her nearly ex-husband, the late, great Bill Paxton. She strings him along. He's just trying to get their divorce papers signed. And she strings him along into more and more storm chasing events. But at a certain point, it gets so intense and crazy. She's scrambling over some broken pieces of a device that's never going to work again. And Bill Paxton is just saying, "Hey, what are you doing? It's all broken. It's busted. You can't use it anymore. Why are you still trying to pull it all back together?" And she just freaks out and yells at him and says, he never knew what it was like to have a tornado chase after you and miss this house and miss that house and chase after you. And that her tenacity for chasing all these storms that keeps getting them in more and more danger throughout that movie has that kind of emotional motivation. And then over the radio, because, when they're on these missions to use their equipment, usually they have radio connecting an entire team. On the radio, everyone hears their conversation. And Bill sort of exposes the elephant in the room and says, all of what you're doing, none of it's going to bring your dad back. You can't undo what happened. You need to sort of be in the now and look at who's in front of you. And she says, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Me." And sort of so much is said through just those few lines, because throughout the whole movie, those two characters have little moments of sexual chemistry, and you sort of feel like maybe they still want each other. It's kind of unsure, but sort of all of those scenes together create this complete story of you know, this woman who had this horrible event happen to her as a child, sort of shape her whole life in chasing storms. But because she hasn't just dealt with it, she can't function right with her own, loved one. So they go through this whole journey together. And, that's kind of the emotional impact of that movie. Trivia fact.
And look at what you got right in front of you.
The whole thing of her father dying was not originally how they wrote or shot that movie. Originally, that movie began where the father was just holding the door. It never ripped open. It never pulled him into the tornado. And all you had was Joe just staring at the storm and kind of going crazy, wanting to see, just out of curiosity. So she was just curious at first. And so the whole thing of her dad dying wasn't in the original cut of the movie. So thus, Bill Paxton's dialogue of, "It won't bring your dad back," that wasn't there either. So the reason for that is the director of Twister was Jan De Bont. He is also known for Speed, which is an awesome movie. Don't let people or yourself tell you that Speed is not an awesome movie. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. Yeah, so Jan De Bont showed the film to Steven Spielberg. I don't know if you know that guy. Great director, but he showed it to Steven Spielberg. And it was Spielberg who suggested that the dad die in that scene. He felt that the movie was essentially working, except that there wasn't the emotional core wasn't quite strong enough or dramatic enough for all the scenes that they had happening. So it just created that much more motivation if that opening scene featured, in this case, a death that would shock and motivate the character for the rest of the movie. And then connecting it back with just a little audio. Remember I said how it was on the radio that everyone's listening to? Won't bring your dad back. So that, the reason we're seeing all this footage of everyone listening, which was probably already there, but we're seeing so much more of it, is because we're hearing that audio dialogue replacement of Bill Paxton saying that line. And originally, I think it was probably a much more cheesy line. It was probably like, "Oh, don't you realize I love you?" Something more like that. I can't remember exactly. But, yeah, that right there is an example of a reshoot of, you shoot a movie, you cut it, and you think everything works. And it does. The film looks amazing. But sometimes there's just a single scene that's needed, or a single moment in a scene that's needed that just helps make the whole story work. So that right there, you got a whole story, but it came out of bits and pieces added at different times of making a movie. So I just thought that was a fun little trivia tidbit of information. How the story is just suggested by a couple shots here and there and stuff.